At BC Overland Rally 2018, Ray Hyland, the organizer of the event, and Chris Walker, the owner of Overlanding BC service, shared their experience crossing to Arctic Circle, or particularly Tuktoyaktuk, by summer road for the first time. No people were allowed before them to go there, and the road didn't exist, so this is their first-hand experience before it would go mainstream.
Turns out the Defender with the little diesel engine in it is incredibly fuel efficient. It's like 25, 26 miles per gallon, whatever that is in Canadian, I can't remember. And the Range Rover is not. When I was 16, I had a 1977 Cadillac Sedan DeVille, and the Range Rover has worse fuel economy than that. So we were getting like, I don't know. No, it's better than that. I think if you drive really conservatively and you have the tires pumped up to like 50 psi and you don't pass anybody, you can maybe get 12 miles per gallon out of the Range Rover. And we were driving fully loaded on dirt roads, and it was, as we like to say in the automotive industry, spirited driving. And we topped up our fuel tanks, and I had a jerry can in the back, which I topped up as well, 20 liters. Now, what could go wrong? So we drove all the way up the Nahanni Range Road until we found the little Highland River, and we stopped and we took some fun pictures, and we took a really nice rock, which I put in the back of the truck, and then we continued on towards Ross River. And Ross River is the only fuel on this road, and it's a long way away. And so we kept going, and we kept going, and we kept going, and like, holy cow, this thing is like forever and a day to get to this little place called Ross River. And my fuel tank was going down and down and down, and we stopped, and I poured all of my fuel from my jerry can in. And Chris, being super helpful, had like 3 jerry cans of diesel on the top of his truck, which I kept looking at and saying, if only I was driving diesel. So he didn't need any of it, because obviously his truck was getting like, 5 times the fuel economy mine was. But, and I, of course, planning ahead, had 1 little jerry can with me, which was long empty. And we finally crested the hill and coasted down into Ross River with my truck on fumes. Yeah, 10 p.m. at night, the one gas station in town was closed. Pretty much the whole town was closed, and we went looking for a campsite. And I actually took my tow strap out of the back of the truck and put it on the passenger seat next to me, because I was that confident that I was going to run out of fuel, and Chris was going to have to drag me to the gas station in the morning. But the little Range Rover made it, and I think we put 89 liters into my 80-liter tank, and then topped up the jerry can, and we continued on into Carcross and down into Dawson City, where I stopped at Lord Co and bought some more jerry cans.
Who's driven the Dempster? A few people. So for those that haven't driven the Dempster Highway, the Dempster Highway goes from just south of Dawson City and it heads to Inuvik. And it's an old road. The Dempster Highway is an iconic northern Canada road. It was built back during the oil boom, is that right? and it was built out of shale. So the rock was really, really, really rough, really, really sharp. And it has a little bit of a reputation as a bit of a tire killer. There's this amazing road that has one little gas station halfway along in Eagle Plains, but it crosses from the Yukon into the Northwest Territories and then finally into the Arctic, or the Arctic Circle. Just stunning, stunning, magical road. So I think we spent 2 days on that road in probably some of the worst weather that we'd encountered so far. Luckily on the trip all the way up to Dawson City, it had been clean, dry, warm, fantastic. Hit the Dempster, and the Dempster lived up to its reputation. Kind of went all ethereal, lots of mist, a bunch of rain. That camp that night on the Dempster was not the most exciting of places, but being that far up in northern Canada was a really, really amazing experience. He didn't know our capability, he didn't know our vehicles, he just knew nothing about us other than these three random people who showed up out of southern BC to come and do this drive up the top. Which is, that's fair enough, we got it. He was pretty upset. We asked him what our options were. He said, "You're not so lost. We'll have a chat in the morning and we'll see where we go from there."
Chris always tries to play everything low key. Okay, so we went in to see this guy and we're like, oh no, we are world travelers. These trucks, we are so experienced with these trucks. We have driven these trucks across the world. These two trucks have been everywhere with us. We know these trucks like the back of our hands. I mean, they're unbelievable expedition machines. You don't have to worry about these trucks. They're not going to drip a drop of oil. They can go anywhere you can throw at them. The super low impact. I mean, they're made out of aluminum. They'll just float across the surface. Luckily, he knows nothing about Land Rovers, this guy that we were talking to. And he says, oh, okay, I'll take all that under advisement and I'll let you know in the morning.
So we go camp. For those that have been to Inuvik there's not a whole lot of stuff there for tourists and recreation. It's a great little town. So we go to this one little restaurant. We're kind of a little dejected. We have a few beers in the cooler, some cocktails, and we buy this $73 pizza. Enjoy that pizza and go to bed, waiting for the next morning because we really wanted to find out whether we were allowed to make this journey. Show up the next morning, it's been sunny, we're optimistic but still pretty nervous. We go into his office, he hands us a radio each, hands us a fluorescent jacket each, and said, head downstairs and meet Charles, or whatever his name was, this chap who's clearly not from around the area, and he's going to escort you up the road. Perfect, it's on. We're excited, we're ready to go, we're fueled up, 27 jerry cans for Ray, none for me, we're great. Meet this guy downstairs and we drive out of town to essentially where the ice road would depart off to the left hand side into the Mackenzie Delta to drive up to when the road's frozen in the winter. We drive out of town and there's this big gate. Big gate is an understatement. Can you imagine Fort Knox? Those are small gates. And the guy who was taking us up there was fantastic. We had to be in convoy. There's massive graders, there's massive quarry trucks moving up and down. So they mined local stone because they didn't want to bring in external resources to build this road. And we learned a lot about the history of why the road is being built, the methods that they were using to build this road, and just had this most beautiful bluebird, clear, no wind, no cloud in the sky, fantastic journey all the way to Tuktoyaktuk. Halfway to that road, I don't know whether you guys have a tent on the top of my truck, and it rung a wee bit of a bell. So there's a section of terrain in the Arctic called the tree line, and the tree line, it's like my tent, is literally, I don't know how to describe it. When the world was being created, someone for some reason decided to draw a line around the top of the world and go, that's where trees end. It sounds funny, right? You drive along and the trees get smaller and smaller and smaller, and they end up roughly the height of the speakers. And then I can't make you understand enough, but they literally stop. And you look left and right when you drive to the tree line, and there's this line of trees.
It's really cool.
So I took physical geography in university, so I can't really agree with somebody drawing a line on the map around the Earth. But I do agree that the physical end of the trees is incredibly dramatic. Like you're just driving along and there's all these trees, and then the trees just stop. You just look both sides, and there's literally a line as far as you can see. It's a straight line. And the trees just end. It's like the trees just said, okay, we're not going to grow anymore. It's not like little trees, the trees get smaller or the trees get scattered. The trees just literally stop, which is amazing to see. Yeah, which is pretty cool. So you pull as far off the side of the road as you can. Yeah, and there is literally nowhere to go. And you just hope that A, they don't hit you or scrape you, and B, they don't drop rocks the size of golf balls or basketballs or wheelbarrows, you know, as they happen to do as they're rocketing along. They just randomly seem to fall off the side. So we had to have him along because he had a radio so he could talk to the rock trucks. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And then we got up to the other gate. And we got up to the other gate, and Charles is there, and he opens the gate, and he's like, okay, good luck, man. And he like waves us through with like this ominous warning almost, and you know, and closes the gate behind us, and off he goes. Oh no, he didn't. He went through. He was like, yeah, I'm going for coffee, and then I'm going home. So we're off on our own, and so we're like, all right, look, there in the distance, this little hamlet, there's Tuktoyaktuk. It's like the promised land, right? We're driving to Tuktoyaktuk, and we've been thinking of this place for weeks. And we drive in, and there's like that scene in a movie where like somebody does something and everybody stops and they stare and you can hear a pin drop. Because we didn't think of telling anybody we were coming. And you can't drive to Tuktoyaktuk in the summertime. Like, forever. Like, since Tuktoyaktuk was made, nobody's ever been able to drive there in the summer. They have a barge, comes up a couple of times up the river in the summer, and in the winter people drive up the ice road. But, you know, so it's really expensive to get to. Yeah, we had one very, very angry lady who chased us through town and slid to a stop beside us as we got out to take some pictures in her F-150. It's a distinctive white F-150. And she started screaming at us because we had driven up the new road. And she, as a local, was not allowed to drive the new road because it wasn't open yet. And it wasn't fair that we were able to bring all this booze in so cheap from Inuvik. And she had to pay $200 per case of beer to get it flown in. Which is true. It was $200 for a case of beer in Tuk. So that, I mean, if you just think about the price of everything, $200 for a case of beer in Tuk kind of gives you an impression of just how much everything costs in Tuk. Everything is twice as much, yeah, by Canadian standards. No, I mean, so like literally everything is flown in or barged in, and everything costs a ridiculous amount of money. And if you want to get your passport picture taken, you got to go to Inuvik. And if you want to talk to somebody about your child tax benefits, you got to go to Inuvik. If you want to get your car registered because your license is expired or your insurance is up, you got to go to Inuvik. And that means like an $800 flight for any little thing. So you can just imagine how difficult it is for the people who live up there. There's no industry, there's no infrastructure. And so they were desperately waiting for this road to be opened. So, yeah, so we arrived in Inuvik, and so we went to the post office, which was also the grocery store. And they had a doctor and a police station, and they had a bunch of other stuff in there. Anyway, so they had this one big store that we went into, and we met the lady who was the postmaster general, who was also the cashier at the grocery store. And we said, where can we park? Where can we camp? And they said, what do you mean? We said, we've driven here on the new road, and we wanna camp. Where can we camp? And I guess this idea of designated campgrounds is a concept that that the Inuit have never really thought about. They're like, what do you mean? Where do you want to camp? Camp where you want. Camp where you stop. And we're like, but where should we camp? Do you have a place where we should, like if we wanted to camp somewhere, what would you recommend? And they looked at us like we were idiots, and they basically said, somewhere flat? Maybe somewhere level that's not too muddy? So they're like, camp wherever you want. So we realized that there was no infrastructure for camping. There was no infrastructure for summer visitors at all. And so we drove, and we said, well, there's this little park on the ocean. Can we camp there? And they're like, whatever you want. And so off we went, and we camped, and it was pretty amazing. Yeah, and so we literally camped right on the Arctic Ocean. So it was us and the Arctic Ocean and Russia there. And it was beautiful. We got all these pictures, and if you look at any of our Facebook pages, you see all these pictures that we took, and it's like gorgeous red sunset in the Arctic Ocean, and our trucks stylishly posed in the front, looking casual. And so I don't know if anybody's a photographer, but when you shoot a lot of commercial photography, we have something we call golden hour. And golden hour is the hour between when the sun kind of disappears and it gets too dark to shoot. That hour before that moment, the sun is low in the sky and the light is golden, and it's just gorgeous photography. And, we told the guys from the government that we were going to write all these articles for these magazines. So we figured, well, I guess since we're here, we should take some pictures. And so we're like, all right, well, I'm going to make margaritas. And Chris is going to get his camera out, and we'll take some pictures and drink margaritas until the sun goes away. That seems fair, right? Celebrate with some margaritas, and in the meantime, we'll take pictures. And that'll continue until the sun's gone. So, we're, on the Arctic Ocean in the summertime. Again, you can come back to our essential planning theme from the beginning, right? Or lack of planning. So the sun's over there, I make the first set of margaritas, and Chris is taking pictures, and it's really pretty, and the sun is moved over there, and I think I make some more margaritas, and we take some more pictures, and the sun moves over there, and the third set of margaritas happen, and then the sun moves over there, and it's still beautiful, and we're like, wait a minute, the sun's on the other side of the truck now. When is sunset? Oh yeah, the sun doesn't set here. So we've been there basically from about 9 p.m. until 2 o'clock in the morning enjoying margaritas, and we're like, I guess this... All right, next plan. Luckily, we realized this before we ran out of tequila. But we had an awesome night, and the next morning we got up, and it wasn't too hard. The sun was in the sky when we got up, still, and I think that was the only reason we didn't sleep in too late, because it was too bright to sleep. And we got up, and then we explored town, and that was pretty cool. We got some really cool pictures of Tuk. Tuk is an amazing place. So we're kind of making light of the whole journey because it was a lot of fun, and it's a little entertaining to talk about our ridiculous choice of vehicles and our lack of planning. Our purpose in life is to act as a warning to others, I think, sometimes. But the community of Tuk is great. The people were super friendly. The environment there, the geography is amazing. They have these things called pingos, which are these ice-cored hills, which look like big pimples on the horizon, and it actually looks cooler than it sounds. It sounds pretty disgusting, ice pimples on the landscape, but they look really cool. And also the storms that they have in the Arctic in the winter, they push all this driftwood. There's no wood in the Arctic naturally, because we're well above the tree line. But the nature of the patterns in the water systems, the currents, I guess that's what I'm looking for. The currents push all this driftwood in to the coastline, and the huge Arctic storm surge pushes all this driftwood onto the land. and it's kind of doing this big swirling thing, and then the water recedes, and then it leaves, like, you know, from here to the ski resort and maybe twice that far distance, these huge meadows filled with driftwood, like huge white, bleached white in the sun logs, in these intricate swirling patterns, like you'd see like a shell, right? Like spiral shells patterns with millions of tons of wood in these really cool patterns that are just kind of drying in the sun. In the sun. So that kind of stuff was amazing, and just the whole environment was spectacular.
We're now heading south. We're halfway through our trip. And like I said earlier, part of my passion is really not trying to retrace my steps. I just like seeing new places. We've made that massive journey up north, and I really wanted to head back down to Prince Rupert, which is one of my favourite places in northern BC. So we cruised down, we spent some time in Dawson City overnight to see some of the gold mining history. We ripped down to Whitehorse, grabbed some supplies, and we carry on. We spend a night or two on the Circle Highway, camp at Mesiad, and we head to Prince Rupert. One of the places that I've never been, which is so iconic, is Haida Gwaii, the Queen Charlotte Islands. So we'd made a wee plan, we're like, you know what, we're up north, why don't we just go to Haida Gwaii as well? We might as well go big or go home. So we spent, I think it was about a week on Haida Gwaii, just to take in culture, just to see some history, and just to enjoy one of the most iconic places in Canada. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We spend a week there, and we spend a lot of our time just trying to camp rough, camp in the wilderness. Alright, hands up, who's been to Haida Gwaii? Has anyone been to Tow Hill? Anyone been to Rose Spit at all? One or two places. So when you go right up into the northern part of Haida Gwaii, essentially where the regular gravel road ends, is a place called Tow Hill. It's iconic, it's one of the places that you'll see in a lot of the pictures of Haida Gwaii. But we heard on the down low that you have this ability to drive along this beach to get to the very most northeastern spot of Haida Gwaii. That's great, right? We all love wheeling, we all love driving around in the wilderness. I used to work for the Coast Guard in the UK, so I had a pretty good handle on tides. We read some tides. We realised at the time we were there was not going to work out, so we hang out for a little bit. And essentially what we're trying to do is wait for the tide to be high, give it an hour or two so the tide starts to drop, and then cruise along this sandy beach to Rose Spit. And the numbers again, I think it was 30 kilometres roughly along this sandy beach to get to Rose Spit to camp as far north as we can, as far right out on the very tip of Haida Gwaii. So the reason we didn't want to leave straight as the tide drops, we're driving on a sandy beach. When a sandy beach has water impregnated in it, it's a lot softer. So if you give it a small amount of time, the water starts to seep down and the sand firms up. Okay, so we cruise along, and this is going great. But we realise, Rose Spit, yeah. We realise that we're in Land Rovers, we're not exactly the fastest vehicles out there. And we also realise that we'd got distracted by going hiking, so we're a little bit behind the 8 ball, so we start cruising along, and we realise the tide's about to turn and start coming in. And when you look at the beach, it's a sandy beach, it's fairly flat, so the tide moves fairly fast. But the uphill side of the beach suddenly turns to fist-sized granite rock or granite boulders. Yeah, we talked about that. So the sand comes up, and then it's suddenly a 45-degree slope with this really big rock shale. You can't drive on it, it's impossible. But the tide comes up right to that point. So things are going okay. We're ripping along, we're realising that the tide's starting to come in. And we see a hiker there, and she's like, oh, I just walked back from there a day or two ago, and I saw this little piece of orange flagging tape on this little stick, and I saw tire tracks. Great. So we cruise along, we're looking for this, and the tide's now starting to come in. And we're now kind of, do we turn around, do we carry on, do we turn around, do we carry on? Oh god. We suddenly find this little rocky shale slope, and it's a one-hit wonder. The tide's right on our heels. Ray's like, I've got it. Rips it, turns around, rips up this thing, flies off the top, gets to the top, and he's all safe. Ray's in a V8. It's a little quicker. which is an oxymoron, it's a Land Rover. I'm in a diesel Defender. Speed is not really my capability. Anyway, we make it up the beach and that's all good. We carry on another 15-20 kilometers and we camp at probably one of the highlights of the entire trip for me. Right out on Rose Spit, right on the ocean, literally with the tide almost lapping at our tires. Beautiful, clean, clear, sunny night, and that's great. Next day, we decide to head back down the beach, take some photos, enjoy the journey. And one of the golden rules when you're traveling on sand, especially a beach with the ocean, is you stick together.
1/2 inches wide. How far could it be, right? And turns out that driving uphill on a beach, which is basically made out of loose golf balls, takes a lot of fuel. Who would have thunk? Unless you're in a diesel Defender. Yeah. So anyway, so we're coming back, and again I'm kind of hovering around the 1/8 mark, and I'd used a lot of fuel on the way out, and every time I slowed down, I started to sink into the sand, and I started to feel the truck trying to bog. And it was like, as long as I keep my speed up like a water surfer, you know, water skier, I'll just skip across the top. So I was like, it's okay. What could go wrong, right? So I got the little Range Rover up to about 110k and skipped across the top of the sand, and I think I barely even touched the water. It was awesome. And Chris was in the back, but I was like, okay, I can see him in the mirror. I can still see his headlights. He's there. He's fine. 20 kilometers behind, but I can still see the twinkle of his headlights.
Yet another adventure. So the trip's starting to draw to a close. We spend a little bit more time on Haida Gwaii, taking in the culture. We take the ferry back to Rupert, spend the night there, and another little bit of a bucket list is to do the true inside passage. So we spent some money, and we spent, was it 18 hours, I think it is? I can't remember the number again. Apparently I'm not very, my memory's not great. We spent this amazing time going down through the inside passage on this boat. We were done with driving by that stage. We enjoyed this amazing scenery. For those who've done the inside passage, it's just spectacular. We hit Vancouver Island, and we're you know, when you do a long trip, you get to that point where you're like, okay, time out. I'm done. I need to go home. I need my bed. I'm over putting my tent up. I'm over sleeping in the back of my car. I'm over camp food. Enjoying the cocktails. It's been an amazing trip, but I'm done. We have this wee conversation for a couple of minutes. And he's like, well, see ya. He takes off to Nanaimo, gets the ferry, because he'd been away from his family for a few weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it was. Matt and I spend this random night just outside Port Hardy. Take the next day, see some family, and we cruise home. It's the end of the trip. So, for me, the reason that I did that trip, like I said at the start, was to just see this amazing scenery, to go to places that you read about, you look in National Geographic, you look on the internet, and the trip for me lived up to everything I was expecting and more. The ability to drive that road before anyone else, it's almost a little self-ego inflating, but that was never really the motivation. It was just the fact that going to a place that other humans hadn't experienced or hadn't had that chance to have that opportunity was just fantastic. So you guys are starting to hear about Tuktoyaktuk. You're starting to read articles about it. Out of all the trips I've done, I've traveled to a lot of places in the world. Ray's done way more than I have. It's one of the highlights or one of the best adventures that I've ever had. And when we sit here as a group, we're all enthusiasts. We love 4x4s. We love adventuring. We love hard trails. We love easy trails. The trip was not about hardcore off-roading. It was about making a journey and creating memories and experiences with amazing scenery, some culture, some history. And I can't even explain. Like, when I sit here thinking about how breathtaking it was, I can't really explain really how magical and how you just can't describe it. You guys seriously have to go. It's a long trip. In all, from the US border. So we were the first people also to go from the US border to the Arctic Ocean in the summertime. So it was kind of two firsts. that ability to drive to the Canadian Arctic, to the Arctic Ocean, is something you guys, if you guys are looking for a massive adventure, it's beyond what you guys will ever dream of and what you guys will really ever expect.
The trip, I mean, we've done this talk a couple of times. Every time we do it, it's a completely different talk, because it's like we randomly remember different parts of the trip, and it's because there was so much going on. I mean, it was a really epic trip. I mean, you know, the year before, Marianne and I and the kids, we did London to Singapore, which was 9 months in a $300 truck with Jake's body strapped underneath it. Not the dead body. He hid that in the garage, but you know, the body of his other truck. But this trip to the Arctic was just as epic. And it didn't take 9 months, and we didn't have to ship it, you know, across a couple of oceans. I mean, we just got in the trucks here. Leave here on Sunday. You could depart from the Overland Rally, and you could just say, rather than driving home, I'm going to call in sick, and I'm going to drive to the Arctic. It's that easy, and it's spectacular. So, yeah, definitely do it. If you don't have a plan to do it, make a plan to do it, because it's one of the last great overlanding trips available in the world. Yeah, and one of the last places of true wilderness left in the world. And we've got it right here in Canada, and it's an unbelievable opportunity. I think if you wait 3 years, the road is going to be filled with Canada Dream RVs filled with German tourists. Honestly. And it's going to be filled with tour buses filled with Korean tourists, right? Okay, I'm not making fun of the Germans, right? Okay, I have a lot of German friends. Not you guys, I have other German friends, but you know. But honestly, it's still wild. It's still isolated. It's still unique. And it's still ours. Yeah, what a great way of putting it. It's still ours. So go out and make that trip. It's unbelievable. What broke on our trip? Honestly, nothing. Yeah, I mean, oh my God, thank you. Oh, and please take your $7,000 titanium plate away. Thank you, Al. Yeah, nothing broke. I mean, seriously, we took the two most unreliable vehicles you could imagine, and we drove them out to the Arctic, and nothing really went wrong. I mean, lots of little things which are just entertaining stories later, but nothing seriously went wrong. Gas caps and oil leaks, and yeah, I went through about 16,000 quarts of oil. But, you know, it's a Land Rover, so that's normal. But, yeah, I mean, it was awesome.
Hey comrades, don't forget to hit that like button and also leave a comment, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you should by hitting that subscription button and also bell notification next to it, so you can actually get my video updates both in notification in your video feed, and as well you can support this channel if you like my videos through PayPal or Patreon in the links down below or just after this video.